Hi, this is Tina Powell, host of In the Suite, where I sit down with top women leaders and some of the biggest names in the financial services and the wealth management industry. Together, we'll discover some of their best secrets and top strategies to grow great business, build a strong brand, and lead teams in the 21st century. I hope you'll enjoy hearing their amazing personal stories of triumph, trepidation, and transformation in hopes of becoming better leaders ourselves. The time for you to lead is now, and you're in the suite. Eugenié George is an author, a podcast coach, a certified financial educator, and she's also a personal financial writer and operations specialist with an MBA, a BS from UC Berkeley in Peace Studies and Conflict Resolution, working on completing her CFP, Certified Financial Planner designation from the American College of Financial Services. As a financial wellness strategist, writer, and speaker, Eugenié is dedicated to helping her corporate and private clients to live their best financial lives. And as author of Our Money Stories, Eugenié was able to move past the feeling that she wasn't adequate enough to being more than enough by proving she could make a living learning about ancestry, money, and culture. In the suite, we talk about some of the results of Eugenié's research and data as the basis for her book. For over 2 years, she gathered uncomfortable data, and she created an unorthodox way of viewing money patterns, interviewing women of color in various groups: Asian American, African American, Native American, and Latinx financial advisors for her book. Our Money Stories not only expresses and exposes economic inequities for women of color, but it also provides a 6-week, no BS, holistic financial wellness plan. And I personally found her book a financial wellness toolkit that serves all women at different stages of life. And one of the many gifts you'll discover about Eugenié is her desire to heal the world and gift women with financial wellness. She's always been a journalist at heart, which is clearly evident from her work and her gift of writing articles and financial education content that empowers women. Eugenié also teaches us in the suite about important facts in history central to Black women, like eviction and Black women's equal pay day. You can receive a free chapter of Eugenié's book, Our Money Stories, at eugeniégeorge.com. And here in the suite, I am personally gifting the first 5 people who tag Eugenié George, that's underscore Eugenié George, all one word, Tina C. Powell, hashtag in the suite, with a free paperback edition. I love it so much. Let this episode with Eugenié George be the start of your money story in the suite. Eugenié George, it's great to have you in the suite. Thank you so much for being here. I'm really, really grateful for your time right now. I'm excited for this episode. I have been looking forward to it now for weeks since you and I first connected. So thanks very much for being here. How are you doing today?
I'm good. It's raining. It's hot and it's raining. So.
Oh, it's hot and it's raining. Yeah, here too, right?
Yeah.
Well, thanks again for being here. Good. I'm kind of happy that it's raining, because if it were sunny right now, you might be like, hey, I got kind of better things to do now.
But it's kind of weird because we're at that stage where we are not really doing much. I just go out. I try to work outside as much as possible, even though the mosquitoes are out. I try to at least get some vitamin D at some part. So
yeah, and me too, although I'm not getting enough. I'm clearly vitamin D deficient and deficient in a lot of things right now. I know that for sure. I'm really, really excited to speak to you. And I know that so are our listeners in the suite. And you are an author, you're a podcast coach, you're a financial wellness coach, an operations specialist, a personal financial writer. And oh, by the way, she's got an MBA. She's got a BS from UC Berkeley in Peace Studies and Conflict Resolutions, and the initials CFP, Certified Financial Planner, from the American College of financial services.
Well, I'm not almost there with the CFP part. So we're
Almost there. Almost there. Wow. I mean, that is extraordinary. And your name also came up. So I know that you wrote a long form piece on kitsis.com, navigating the financial planning world as a person of color. And that was done back on March 11th, 2019. Boy, was that incredible. First of all, everyone that knows Michael, we know that if you're on Kitsis's podcast and his site, it was an incredible piece. We're going to make sure that we link it to the show notes because I learned a lot from learning a lot from you. You have quite a lot of content out there right now, and it's really important. I can't think of a better time. I'm trying to do a better job to learn how to advocate better for women of color in financial services. And I'm also too doing my own exploring about history and things that I thought that I knew, but perhaps there was a different version of the story. So I want to thank you for producing those long form pieces. And of course, we'll link to them. But wow, like a lot has happened since you wrote that column. And I think that it was, again, a harbinger in some ways that piece of information and that column has been out now for over a year. So, why don't we start there? How did you get in touch with Michael to write that piece? And what was the catalyst? What was the inspiration back then?
So I had written my first draft, or that's a lie. I'd written my sixth draft, what now is Our Money Stories. And I said, well, you know what? Let me test the waters in the financial planning world, because if that's the hardest group to tap into. If I get recognition from there, then of course it'll be easier for me to talk to women of color, because that was something I had already done, or, folks, disenfranchised folks. But I just said, let me try to hit the top first. So I just spent one Saturday and I just wrote out my thoughts and ideas with it, because I had already done the research behind the history of wealth management, because I listened to Fong Long's, she's a CFP. I listened to her Kitsis podcast episode, and she told us, she was like, read these 3 books. And I read them and I did my research, and then I wrote kind of my experience, and I had written that 2018, come out until 2019. So I had done my first year of being in the financial planning industry. I had written something on that. Fortunately, it's like now I understand where I have editing gaps or writing gaps after writing a book, but they were really helpful in terms of his team, in terms of holding my hand, because they said that the story was important. So they were really helpful with that. So yeah, I wrote it. I did not know the type of feedback that I was going to get. It was overwhelming at that time. But yeah, it's a great experience. And I tried to write another one, but I don't think I feel like I was too vulnerable. So I'm going to go back to the drawing board and eventually write my reflection for my second year.
It's a great piece. And like you said, you had done a lot of what you pulled into that article was the research from your book, which we're going to talk about, Our Money Stories. And what Eugenié is also, she's gifted with the ability to write. I will say that. And that your resources, when you write, she's amassed an incredible array of resources that she's posted to her own website too. So we'll make sure that we have those as well too. And it's just it's a refreshing voice. You bring, Eugenié, a refreshing voice to the industry, and you bring a context that we really needed to have. We needed to have it back then in March, but even now, I think the world is really poised to hear what it is that you have to say and to hear your story. So I'm really excited to talk about your money story. And for those of you who don't know, Eugenie's book, Our Money Stories, you can find it on Amazon. You can find it on Kindle. And by the way, I'll have a little bit of a surprise at the end of this podcast. But it starts out, it's so real. It starts out with a very emotional journey. It starts out talking about the suicide of your childhood friend, Michelle, and you really hitting rock bottom. And I swear, as I was reading through the pages, I could feel the weight. I could feel the darkness. And it was so real. And naturally that led to you getting sick. I mean, of course, you were devastated. The loss of of your friend from, seventh grade. I still have people in my life from that time. So those relationships and those friendships are really meaningful. And obviously you got sick, which was a natural occurrence, but so sick that you eventually lost your job and the ability to pay your bills. And I want to take it back to that defining moment and what you discovered, and I want to read for all of you a small passage, because that I feel is the defining moment. And when we all kind of search, as we have those really dark, desperate moments, what Eugenie's done is she's turned it into an incredible opportunity. So it starts out like this. I replayed all the events that led me to this pink eviction slip. As I walked to my blue Mini Cooper, tears streaming down my face and sharp pain moved like a dagger in my heart, down into my gut. The feeling of paralysis, the disbelief that all pain would happen was mind-boggling to me. Disoriented, I began plotting, devising some plan to figure out what move I should make next. How did you get the strength to move forward? And what was that next move? It reads like a movie.
I mean, I feel like, when I wrote that, it was after I had interviewed 40 women. So the fact that everybody was willing to be open and vulnerable, I actually didn't write the first 4 chapters of the book. I wrote them like literally a month before publishing it. Because it was like I had listened to all these women's stories and I still wasn't telling mine correctly or the way that it should be told. So I'm very grateful for that. The second thing is it was just tough. The feeling like you failed is rough. When you hit that rock bottom, it's really difficult, and your ability you trying to hide is difficult. I mean, I was fortunate that I had 4 friends that really helped me out, because at that time I moved to a new city. It was like I was only like 6 months into living in Philadelphia, and I just was like, I don't even know what to do. And so I called my friend and I said, like, this is what's happening. And she just remembered that a mutual friend of ours had just bought a house and had like open rooms. And so was like, yeah, you can pay whenever you can. So I was able to like live in a place that was safe, where I was around people that were really great and I had great conversations with, and I paid a really low amount of rent. And then after those 2 years, it took like 2 years. I went to therapy. I applied for the American College African American Scholarship, because I was like, girl, you better learn some money. You better learn money so you won't ever be in this situation ever. I was so serious. I was like, and it's so funny because in Kids' thing, in the article, I was like, I stumbled upon. It's like, no, I ran hella far, and I was researching, and I was digging in my Google history, like that you learned something somewhere. Like, what was this thing you read about this like years ago? So I was just hungry for that, and yeah, I did that. I applied to grad school. I was like, listen. Student loans, this is where I was like, student loans can get me out of this.
Yeah.
Get a job. Let me work. I actually worked on the main line. And the main line is like in the suburbs of Philadelphia. You have a lot of wealthy folks that live there. lots of wealth management firms live there or are there. And I worked at a restaurant. I was like, look, these people have money. Let me figure out what they're talking about. And I think that was what really helped me understand. I was like, oh, first of all, you have to separate the idea of being white with understanding money,
Yeah.
because that's not a real thing. And a lot of the conversations that I was listening to and eavesdropping on were a lot of people just talking about mishaps, money mishaps that people had when someone was young, got a divorce, and they lost everything, but they're still just trying to keep up with the Joneses there. So I just would listen in on conversations, and I really paid attention to it. And there was also a freedom around talking about money. And I just said that, well, that's what I want. So I did that. And then, so that was like a culmination of 2 years. But while I was doing that, trying to figure out how to get scholarships, trying to figure out how to understand finances, I met Amanda Steinberg.
Oh, sure. Yeah. From Daily Worth.
Yeah.
And she's mentioned in your book as well.
Yeah. So I met Amanda Steinberg, and that was like, oh, here's a woman who is older than me, who had literally almost the same type of experience.
Yes.
I can get out of it. And then I Googled Black women, eviction, whatever. And this woman named Ashley Fox from Philadelphia had the same thing, and now has like a 6-figure business. And she was only like maybe 2 years out when they recorded that. She was like 2 years out from that eviction. So I was like, oh my gosh, look at it. Like, thank goodness for like Google and algorithms and everything. But here are two people that are within my area that have the same exact type of experience in some weird way. How to like figure out, oh, I'm the person that makes money, but how come I can't?
Right.
So that was like a big thing. So I just really tried to humble myself in terms of like, you don't know anything when it comes to money, even though you think. And then the therapy helped because I realized like a lot of things what I thought was success was whiteness. And that's a hard thing to grapple with. And it's a hard thing to be like, oh, I actually feel inferior. I have the feeling of feeling inferior because of the color of my skin and my hue. So I did all of that work within 2 years, and it's still doing that work. But I'm very fortunate to understand the difference between the two, and understand that, that was the language that people told me and instilled in me. That doesn't mean that these people are bad people. It just means that I have to develop my own self-worth.
Well, first of all, I want to give you credit for sharing the story. And when I was reading those pages, it brought me back to my own money story, which is not a happy-go-lucky fairy tale either. And so you sharing that vulnerability was the thing that really moved me inside. But then you took the other step that you asked for help. And I think that's why I wanted to start out with that, because I don't care who you are right now listening to this podcast and the color of your skin. We've all been at that place that you talked about. And then I think I can't imagine what it was like for you. First you have the money, and then you have the financial, and then you're thinking inside that how you're feeling about yourself, and that self-worth piece is really, really hard. And we all struggle with it. But I'm hearing from you that you, as being a Black woman in financial services, well, even before that's a hard thing to get over. And you need to be intentional about how to do it. There's a method for doing it, but it's lifelong. I can tell you that I feel the same thing, that there was a time when I had no knowledge about things that I should have. So you taking that first step is just a reminder, Eugenié, that we need to ask for help. We're not going to solve our problems. We're not going to rewire our thinking and reset our thinking unless that we're getting the professional help to do that. And so I want to I want to talk a little bit about that because you took it to another level of you getting help. So not only the friends, and thank God that Google was there. I sure wish that Google was around when I had these problems, and Google was not there.
Yeah, but the crazy thing also, which I've heard from people that are older than myself, it's like when you want something badly, the universe figures out a way. You could be at a grocery store and then see like a Susie Orman book and go, well, I don't really agree with all her stuff, or like read it and be like, that makes kind of sense. But then you get that inkling, oh, I got to learn about my money. So I feel like if your heart's there and you're really trying to get out of it, there's always a way. There's always some way. And I'm not trying to be as woo as possible, but when I was like, I need to get out.
I know, believe me, I know. Like I said, that's all. I'll be happy to share my money story another time with you, and you'll be like, "Oh wow, I didn't know that." And yes, there was relentless. What I can tell you is that I was relentless, like you, right? You set it out there as an intention and you don't stop. And there's not one right direction, right? I kind of feel that in order to get to the other side, it's not one solution, but it's the cumulative value of you seeking out those solutions, and everything and everyone deposits a little thing. Oh, meet that person. Oh, speak to this person. Oh, join this association, right? One of the things that you mentioned in your book was Debtors Anonymous. And that program was a help. And who knew that even that was a resource? So I think that you found a resource, you put people and groups, and you made lots of friends in the process, and you took a defining moment that was really dark and you turned it around, you turned it upside down. That's the exciting part.
Yeah.
So I want to get back to some of the research that you found about some of the key findings, because I think that it's important. I want to mention it. It was an eye opener for me. So I wasn't just take a pause for a minute and talk about it. So there are key findings from the MacArthur Foundation about eviction for Black women. And I didn't realize, again, before meeting you and reading the book and going through it. But talk to us a little bit about the reasons why it's exacerbated more for Black women over white women.
The way I like to describe it is, women have to pay the pink tax, right? So everyone knows that if you identify as a woman, you're going to get certain products and they're going to be more expensive, right? Or right. The tax of, like right now, what's going on, you have people having to sacrifice or overworking, right? Doing homeschooling and or being a teacher and taking care of the kids and doing your work, right? And none of that is monetized, which is like something that I do. Like I clean up. I'm a person that cleans. That's not monetary value, right? So you have the pink tax, and then you have the Black tax, and so there's so much history that goes through. Well, for starters, a lot of Black women are not married. They're not into income households, and there's a positive part of it and a negative part of it about it. The positive part is a lot of women feel like they can take care of themselves and take care of their kids in a better way. The negative thing is that, for every 1 in 3 Black males, they've been in contact with the prison system.
Right.
So that affects your money.
Exactly.
So that's what typically ends up happening. And then the other thing is because Black women were slaves and had to hold white women's hands and be the foundation, be the matriarchy, because I would say that, they don't really do studies on it, but Black women typically now are the matriarchy. We had to balance all of these factors. And of course, when you're behind in a payment, where do you go typically? Like most folks will go to a check cashing place, or most folks won't say anything. That's what I did. I didn't say like I need help with money, and when I did do it, my parents were like, we cannot help you. Like,
right.
And so it happened so fast. It was like one day I was in a courthouse room and they thought I was a lawyer because I didn't match what most Black women that are evicted are. So the judge thought that I was a lawyer.
Mm.
Right? And even the lawyer that was against me, because I was standing for myself, she was like, girl, you went to Berkeley. You can do it.
Well, that's what I mean.
I don't have any money. I'm like, you. So it was like, yeah. So it was even that dynamic, right? Like people thought I was a lawyer. Well,
Yeah. The juxtaposition of being in that exact situation.
and having like a weird privilege, right?
Yeah, right.
But not having it. Yeah, so that was kind of hard. And then once I did my research, there was a great book, which I'm going over all the key takeaways again. It's called Evicted. And it traced folks in the 2008 recession and how the eviction system works. And honestly, if most Black women are the breadwinners or single and our net worth isn't where we want it to be, it kind of just happened so quickly. It happened so fast. It was like month one, like ding, and then month 3, you're out. So it happened so fast. I was like, what? Like I couldn't get. And the hardest part about it, which I don't blame them and I don't get frustrated, but I was in the kind of like Tony Robbins, wealth, whatever, those types of groups. And they kind of just ignored race. And it was, like, you go out there, you can do it, and I, of course, like, yeah, I can do it, but I have to be really strategic. And I can't go out and even to this day, people are like, have an abundant mindset. I'm like, yeah, abundant mindset and not a rational mindset, because that's not a thing either. But like, they're like, go out there, have a I'm like, bitch, sorry.
Okay.
It's not matching up.
Yeah.
Isn't that right? And unfortunately, my friend Michelle and I were in a money class like that together. I never say her real name, but like,
I know it's not her real name.
Yeah. My friend Michelle and I were in a class and we would joke around about money. And even in middle school, it never occurred to me, oh, she was the one who didn't have, she like lived almost out of an RV. And it never clicked to me. Oh, there's money, there's mental health issues, and there's money issues, or not caring about it. So, I mean, that also was a red flag when I started thinking about being in the financial industry. So yeah, the eviction part is really complex, but it happens so fast. And unfortunately, there's not that much help. There's not that many organizations that can truly help. So,
and one of the things that I worry about right now in coronavirus, and you hit upon it, that the book Evicted dealt with the amount of evictions after the recession, and now as you're describing that story, I'm panicked, because that was a recession. This is coronavirus, and this is a health crisis. This is an economic crisis. This is a political crisis. This is a race crisis. There are so many things at work. What are we in for now? There's going to be such a wave, and I don't know that we have the answers right now. I'm curious if there's anything that, you feel that we should be, if there's any resource, like, where's the first place to go? We've talked about it initially. The first place is to ask for help around the people that you know. And hopefully that you have some really good friends, people that you can really count on, that who understand who you are, and who also too can appreciate the fact that maybe by virtue, even by the color of your skin, that there could be other factors that you've enlightened me to, that, yeah, it's not just having an abundant mentality. Let's get real. There's some real issues at work here, but how could we help other people in need if we meet and find those people? women who are being evicted, where's the first place that they should go?
Well, it used to, most of the stuff that I used to navigate people towards was the CFPB board. That used to be the thing. But then right now, there's been a lot of stuff happening with that too. So currently, when this comes out, you'll definitely have the resource package. But
Yeah.
I'm working on right now within the next 2 weeks, especially for Black Women's Equal Pay Day. Yes. Do we want to talk about equal pay? Yeah, but
We absolutely want to talk about equal pay. We want to make sure that, number one, that the date is on the calendar for everyone. So why don't you tell everybody what that date is?
Oh, it's August 13th. So
Okay.
what I'm doing right now this is where the privilege happens, right? My best friend from high school is a lawyer, and she helps folks with evictions. So, like, even that, I didn't even ask her. This was crazy. It's like, I didn't even ask her, oh, hey, could you help me out with it? Because she's a lawyer. Like, it was things like that it just didn't even occur to me. Like, I should ask people that I know that are doing this. So I'm actually creating a resource page where the resource page is really helping people navigate that statistic of what happens when you recognize that you're not being paid equally, right? So,
yeah.
Okay, what's something that can really affect you is your house stability. Stability, like the next 3 months, people are about to get evicted. So what I'm going to do is start finding, or what I'm doing right now is looking for actual resources that can help folks and walk them through the whole process. The other thing that's going to hit really hard is Black women have a lot of student loans. Lots. They have more than most folks. So we're going to do that. Like we have the student loan planner, which currently they're charged their services for $395, but I'm going to try to negotiate.
Good.
Some type of there should be some like little Black Women's Equal Pay Day thing. That would be kind of nice.
I love it. So those are great. So you'll put together some of those resources. And then I think that it brings me back to the time where you also too started to Google. What are your thoughts on I think that there's more publications. We can certainly do our role in making sure that we're writing about Equal Pay Day for Black women, that we're putting information out on the internet. Again, we never know when somebody's going to be in that defining moment and they're going to be needing to Google something. But I would say that for everyone listening to the broadcast right now, Eugenié is hard at work at putting these resources together. There's nothing to stop you from also to putting them on your website, sharing it on social media, putting it on LinkedIn. And we just want to make sure that resources are findable and searchable. There's no one easy answer. This is a problem that has been going on for years and years. What we do know is that we're trying to at least to help the people that we can help by doing our part. Everybody take a little part of the problem. Maybe problem can get solved that way.
Yeah.
So one of the things that you started to talk about also too in your book, and which is a common theme in our discussions, is the fact that, money and health and mental health are all really part of one and the same story. It's interesting. I spent 8 years listening to the conversations of people in a wealth management environment. And I could tell you that that's absolutely true. You need all three of them, actually, if you're going to have a positive money story. And if you're going to improve that money story, you have to deal with all three. Your pocketbook is, I think, an outcome of how you're feeling mentally, spiritually, how you're going out into the world. But you found out, you took it to another level in your book, and you talked about adverse childhood experiences, because some of the things that we might be feeling might be related to an early trauma. And women in general, Black women, white women, Latina women, Asian women, African American Indian women, all cultures have gone through some sort of trauma in childhood, and that experience has left an imprint on their money. And can you talk a little bit about it? I had never heard the term used before, ACE, adverse childhood experience. So I think I want to make you all aware on this podcast on In the Suite. I know we're getting really deep here, ladies and gentlemen, in the suite today. I think that we need to know the facts. We need to know the truth.
Adverse childhood experience is a study that was conducted by Kaiser Permanente and the CDC. And basically what they wanted to find out is, based off of your childhood, are there going to be long-term health effects that can hinder you from living overall?
Yeah.
So it's so crazy, because literally when I started looking at this, Dr. Nadine Harris Burke, who is now the California Surgeon General, which there's only one state that has a Surgeon General, which is crazy. And that's like where I grew up too.
That's crazy. That only you would find that.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Wow.
When I go in, it's like, when I want to, I think they call it a multi-potentialite or something like that, where it's like when you're interested in a topic, you will go really deep into that topic, where it's like neurotic and like Excel spreadsheets, and I'm like, okay, what is it like? So I'm very aware of that's the type of person that I am. So this is the first time right now where I'm having a low information diet.
Wow. I mean, well, first of all, I have to say the big surprises from this podcast is that we're giving away 5 copies. And if you want a copy of Eugenié's book, Our Money Stories, it's something that you need to have. I want you to email me personally, tina@csuitesocialmedia.com, and I will gift it to you. You can have the Kindle version. I can have it sent to your house. You need to read what's in this book. Eugenié is a very talented writer, and she's a talented researcher. I have to admit that when I first read even the Michael Kitsis's article that you put, it's long form, right? And it really goes in deep. What you peeled back the onion for me is the fact that, oh, I didn't realize those things that happen would really show up and be part of my money story later in life. That's what the revealing moment is. And that's, I think, the big takeaway for people, right? Wouldn't you say?
Yeah. So, I mean, I completely agree. And I mean, it doesn't really matter who you are, where you come from. Everybody has trauma. There's a great book called The Trauma of Everyday Life.
Oh, great.
I read that maybe like 7 years ago, and I was like, oh my gosh, would you look at that? Like, it's every day, And in the city, it's like, trauma everywhere, So.
Wow. Well, we're going to have Dr. Valletta Bryan actually on this podcast, and she is, so we're going to be talking about trauma with her. Like I said, we're getting in deep. And one of the things that you did really well in the book is that you highlighted the stories of women there. And again, you interviewed 40 people, and you wanted to make sure that you had experiences for women of color, Native American, Latin, African, and Asian American. And although I'd love to explore each of those stories, and we could be here for another few hours, I know your time is valuable. Can you tell us what story impacted you the most?
Yes. Carmen. I think I called her Carmen. Sometimes you forget. Because I had to create everybody's, Yeah,
exactly. Everybody's alter ego.
Right. Carmen's story was the most intense for me, because here this woman is, I think she has like a credit. She basically she's a person that if all the problems in your credit happen, you come to her. So it's like,
right.
I don't know what they call it. It's not a credit. It's like knee deep. You deal with lawyers, all that stuff, tax liens, all that stuff. She deals with that. Her business right now is making she has a 6-figure business. She's Mexican American and she is on it. Like, paid her undergraduate, couldn't get scholarships, couldn't get the Dream Act, nothing. Like, literally paid everything, figured it out. And her story had the most traumatic impact. So, in this sense, she was sexually assaulted by her father for years. And that affected her money story. A lot of people don't understand that when people are at the top or are at the most successful, a lot of people have the most trauma. So,
Yes, I've noticed that.
so you gotta figure like that. During that time too, I was watching In the Clear with I don't know if you're Going Clear. It's the HBO documentary about the School of Scientology, and for whatever reason, the information that they have on like John Travolta and all these like famous people, you don't realize. Like, oh my goodness, like Tom Cruise had so much trauma.
Yeah.
Child that you're like, oh, of course you want to make people happy. Your goal is to sit in the limelight. And so the average childhood thing was so spot on, because it was like, if you don't have the finances, you're going to have, unfortunately, bad or unfortunately not the best habits with your money, because it's going to be so connected to your health. But if you look at how, it doesn't matter how wealthy or how lack of access that you have, you're going to have, this trauma is going to affect you. And then in the book, in particular, I talk about my dad, who has an ACE score of 3 or 4 or something like that. And his coping mechanism, thank God, was just drinking sodas.
Yeah.
That's the only coping mechanism that he has. But again, that affects his money as well, right? So you can tie, it doesn't matter if you're a male or female or whatever you identify with, your trauma can affect your every habit that you have. And so being able to tie it to money, that I felt like that was a unique opportunity. And fortunately, because I was talking to someone that works at Kitsis right now, she's a researcher. And I said, hey, I got this idea, she thought it was Megan. Megan was like, yeah, I'm about to write about it. So that's when I was like, okay, all this is going to tie in together. And how can I make all of these stories, particularly with Carmen, tie into her ACE score, how it affects how she viewed money, and how sex or intimacy was a very interesting link with her money. So that was the one that affected me the most.
Well, they're all great stories. And again, you start to see ties back. You start to relate it to your own life.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really helpful. And I think that the way that you overcome it is that you work with a professional, but the first thing that you have to do is you have to realize that some sort of problem or something exists before you can actually address it. So the stories are, I think, a direction, an interesting direction to where the industry is going, and connecting more than it's more than just money by itself and how's my portfolio doing. And again, I want to remind everyone listening that Eugenié has gone through you've gone through all the CFP materials so far, right?
I'm halfway through.
Yeah. Okay. I have to tell you that there is a rigor here, right?
Yeah.
There is an amazing rigor here of what Eugenié is having to do. And then I can't wait for that, actually, because of all these different things. And who knows? I think that you're really going to have a huge impact on the financial planning profession, because you are introducing all of these themes. And while they might be hard to talk about it, let's face it, you guys. Okay, let's be real. It's hard to swallow. Would we rather talk about other things that have a little bit more levity and humor at times? Absolutely, absolutely. But again, what we're trying to do is we're trying to solve for larger issues, and we have to realize that they might be tied back to things in our own experiences that we didn't know. So let's get on the lighter side. Let's get on the other side. one of the things that you say on your website, and you have it on your LinkedIn as well too, is that you are going to help us to create a 6-week, no BS, holistic financial wellness plan. And you know what? I'm like, yeah, sign me up for that. 6-week, no BS. You know, where do you start with that? Where do you start with some of your clients?
I mean, fortunately, while I was writing this, I was working for Asset Map. So I guess it's a plug for Asset Map. So while I was working for them.
Oh, sure. Adam Holt.
Yeah. So while I was working from them, the software was so interesting to me. It was like I did more of the looking at the software than the work.
That's so cool. I mean, they have a very interesting software that the way that they're showing, right? Like the household, they're literally showing like the people and making a map and making a diagram so that people can visualize financial planning, estate planning, all of the things that they need, and how people in a household or a family actually relate, right? All of those different associations. There's very few people doing it, right, Eugenié?
I would say that's the only, from what I've seen.
Yeah. There's only, I think there's one other tool that the name escapes me. Everyone can look at the KITS technology map to find out, you know, how the fintech world is delineated with all of the tools.
Yeah, and you know the crazy thing is, like, I was only there for a half a year because it was almost like a internship. The thing about it is, like, that app to me is what we should be doing when we're talking to clients there. Because if you're a novice and you don't understand money, you have to visibly be able to see what's happening. So when I wrote that, had that idea, I was working for Asset Map. Then I also was teaching classes in corporations for this company called On the Go-Go. So of course you could tell I'm always hustling. Can't wait to just rest. After that, I was a person. I would kind of be like, hey guys, don't you, like, let's talk about your map, or like, let's talk about who you're connected to. So the first step is to write out your own money story and kind of find out, like, how does your story play a role into your money. So people talk about it. There's a couple of folks that talk about your money story, but it was more about, like, write it out, see where it takes you. And then the next week's, it just built on each other. Like the next week was, okay, well, like, let's look at your wellness pillars. I'm kind of explaining to you what our wellness is. Kind of ask yourself, in each aspect of my life, how does money play a role into my money? What's the positive parts, the negative parts? And then from the interviews that I had with all these women, they didn't know their net worth. And they didn't know, even if they had like financial advisors, whatever, most of them did not know their net worth, and they weren't organized when it came to their money. Like, tons of people are like, yeah, you got to put its files, like digital files. Like, no, when you're starting out, you have to print these things out so you can visibly see it. So buy a file cabinet. I know you're going to laugh at me, but there are some things that you have to have. And I think I would say that most readers, I mean, there's a lot of financial advisors that are reading it, but even then, you don't know. I've met tons of financial advisors that have no money. So,
oh, sure. Oh, yeah. And like I said, even on those discussions, it's all relative. You could be making $1 million a year and you could be blowing through it.
Yeah.
Like, right. You could be, it matters not the amount of money that you make. It's how you manage your life around it and make decisions around it. Right.
Yeah. So it literally, the whole thing was visibly be able to see where you're at, and then fiscally be able to check in with your money once a quarter. So that's why it was 6 weeks, because you can literally redo this every 6 weeks and roughly every quarter. And it's not that difficult. But yeah, you have to look at your net worth every quarter. you got to do certain things that don't feel comfortable. And I mean, I do them myself too. So.
Oh yeah, I check. One of the things that I learn is just looking at your online bank accounts every single day. And sure enough, and then especially right now with like fraud and whatnot, I have found things that had no reason to be there. Again, they were fraudulent charges. My credit cards are all frozen. I subscribe to, I think it's on Equifax. I have like, I can get my credit history and my credit report on demand at any time. Forget about it like, oh, getting your credit report once a year. No. I want it like at least once a month. And I think we have access to a lot of online tools, but you bring up a really important point. And certainly I'm going to say yes, because I'm old school, that having it printed is another mechanism for you to interact with your own financial affairs differently. So, it's good to have it in both places, even if you lean in more towards the print over the digital.
Yeah. Because what I do right now is I think we're going to talk about financial BFF. So I'll be real quick, but I have my Excel spreadsheet. I have one app, and then I have everything that I write on paper. So it's like I do all three of them just so I can see it and double check. Because I'm not at the money goal. Like, I have a certain money goal, which is having $100,000 to have.
Yeah, right.
To have.
Well, yeah.
So, and that to me was important because I heard another financial BFF. I heard someone else say that once they got to that amount, then they were able to be more playful with certain things, and they were able to jump out and have their own business, which I own a business, but it's like looking at my skin color, everything. It's like I want to have the freedom to just say no.
Yeah. What Eugenié is talking about is the important concept that she developed and that she created the book, and that is financial BFFs. And these are people who you surround yourself with who hold you accountable. The fact that you even have a goal is a lot. Probably like the 80% of the population don't have an exact goal. And I'm like you, there's a certain amount of money that I want to make. There's a certain amount of money that I wanted my business to make. I have my business bookkeeping in QuickBooks. I'm able to run a report at any time. And you better believe that I went old school and I wrote down in a journal, actually, what I wanted to gross for the year 2020. Mm-hmm. And it all starts with, knowing those goals and having the people around you. And I would say that my mother's an accountability partner, and my aunt, who was the first attorney in our family. My mother's was the oldest of 9. It was not a childhood of privilege at all. So the fact that anybody even went to college was a major thing. And my father, who never even, put a foot into a college or university. So it is about, surrounding yourself with people. I think there's the rule, right? Like, you are an accumulation or the average of the 5 people closest to you. So who you want as a financial BFF would be a pretty important thing, right, Eugenié?
Yeah. I mean, you got to find them. And it takes a while too. So be patient.
Yeah. So I think the book is definitely a great resource, and, following you on Twitter and LinkedIn, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
I just ran on Twitter all the time. So that's pretty much where I'm at. It was like the recovering type A, the organizer, everything was always against Twitter. And then finally, when I understood it, it just was like Twitter over everything. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, no, I love it. I created a program years ago called Twitternomics, and everybody was like, I was like, yes, let's have a Twitter account. And everybody thought I was crazy. And now it's a blessing, because I would even in coronavirus, it's a mechanism that connects us to one another, right, and that I get to see what you're talking about and what you're reading about. So I definitely, you need to follow Eugenié George on Twitter. We'll have a link to her Twitter account. But two more questions for you, but one's a really important question. And that is, in the suite here, we believe in allyship and what it means for white women to support Black women in the workplace. And I'm doing a lot of work on that. I'm reading Minda Hart's The Memo, and she's very specific in that. I think that's a good first step for white women listening to support Black women, is to understand what Eugenié was talking about in the beginning of this broadcast, to understand that the experiences are different. It is a fundamental different experience, and we have to come to terms with that, and it's a harder experience. But what do you think? I'm curious. What does that look like to you? How can we support equal pay day for Black women? How do we show up for Black women on equal pay day for Black women in August on the 13th? What can we do?
I mean, I think it's a big ask. I think I think it really is. Like, of course, I'm going to write articles about it.
Yeah.
I'm very fortunate. I'm very fortunate in the sense that all my friends that are white women have either at some point in my life have spoken and said, this is wrong and you're doing this because of her color, or has been the person that pointed it out to me. Right. So I'm in a really different space in terms of, and I want to acknowledge that my friends that text me I went to UC Berkeley, and, there are some women that are like, this is wrong. So wherever you are with your stage, just kind of be aware of that, especially if you're white, but I'm not a white woman, so I can't fully say, but I would say wherever you are in your stage, just be aware of like you just said, the 5 people that most people around you are not going to have that conversation with Black women's equal pay day. There is some kind of backlash right now, or there's some very unsettling feelings, because what's happening is a lot of white women are like texting and saying like, how are you? Like, I'm checking in on you. And a lot of people are like, I've been saying this for years.
Right.
Y'all just weren't listening. Or, you would say, you're kidding. Or, when I remember being in high school and someone called me colored, and I was like, this is not right. And I kid you not, these girls were like, you're overreacting. You're doing this. So like, there's so much trauma, even with having conversations with white women. I mean, buy the memo, see where you're at. But I mean, honestly, I feel like White Fragility that book is a great book. I never recommend White Fragility to Black folks, because a lot of folks get upset. But I would recommend it to white women, because typically when it comes to, especially if you're more on the liberal side, you're like, we're the same. And you'll unconsciously create your own bias, but not recognizing that, even if there's a Princess and the Frog is a great movie to see the differences, the dualities between the two races and how people respond to them. So even the princess, who is Tiana, is like works and is trying to make it to the top. And the other woman who's her friend, does not see the same lens. So just kind of be aware of that. So I would just say, read White Fragility, read the memo. The memo just gives you anecdotal stories, which are great.
Oh yeah, they're really, really impactful. I mean, some of the stories I'm like, wait, this happened like during my lifetime? Like it's some of the stories that I'm hearing are, in one word, heinous is the word that truthfully comes to mind.
Right.
And so we'll put these resources. And again, I think that the fact that white women, if I could speak in general terms right now, a lot of us are affected by what's going on, and we want to do better. And I think just the acknowledgement of that, there's all types of resources. And again, we're going to have multiple people in the suite right now to talk about these issues, because we feel that they're important and they need to be front and center. And let's acknowledge that, and let's just appreciate each other and look at each other as individuals, and that they've gone through certain experiences that we don't know the depth of those experiences. So let's just treat each other a little bit more kindly.
Yeah. And there are a couple of organizations I would say, look at and read their stories. Like Zora magazine is a great, well-written news publication from all women, from women of color, and you can read and understand just how people's experiences are. Just learning about people. The Plug is really good if you're talking about the tech industry.
Mm-hmm.
They actively, Sherelle is a great resource where she looks at data and sees where there's problems. Of course, Linda, but yeah, there's a couple of resources that, if you're whatever industry you're in, look at that industry and just type in, like navigating, like how I wrote it. Like,
Yeah. And here's the thing. Here's another step, because resources are great, right? We put them out there, and that, share them with the people. Doesn't matter how big of a company or small of a company that you are. Share them with the people in your organization. So we work with here at C-Suite Social Media. We have interns, we have part-timers, we have people that we outsource to. And I have not only made Minda's book available, I've actually purchased it on their behalf, and I have a paid day. I have a paid day that I have allocated to them. They get to pick it out. And that's all that I want them doing that day. I want them just to read the stories. I want them to give the resources. So if you're a business owner, and again, I'm a small business owner, do right and make the resources available, share them on your intranet, share them on social media, share them through your email newsletter, and, give your people some time off to actually to absorb these resources. Make it easy for people. They're stressed. We talked about it in the beginning. People are now, women especially, are having to deal with their kids at home all summer long when they would normally be at camp. So just, help people to find the time to, examine and to read and to listen. And that's what I want to say. You don't need to be a CEO of a Fortune 500 company to show empathy and concern for everyone that works with you. So we're going to end with on a little levity note here, and that is, I ask the same question to every guest here in the suite, and it's how we end the podcast each time about, there are times that you need to bring that superpower. Let's face it, whether or not that you're talking on stage or whether or not you're going for that interview. And a lot of women in the suite have something special that they either tell themselves, carry, that gives them that like power boost, where, anything. What is it for you? Do you have something special that, you're trying to draw that energy in?
I mean, I guess it's humor. Like I have a very funny family, or their mannerisms make me laugh. I think that's the thing that kind of gets me through. I mean, I was runner up for class clown, and
oh wow,
I was really like the go getter. Like I still was really type A. I was rolling with the jokes, and I was making my teachers laugh. So. So I'm so grateful for that. Yeah, so that was the whole thing too, because my book before was actually funnier. Like it was just like joke, and then everybody that reviewed it, they were like, "We get it, you're funny, but you need to tone it back and be more vulnerable."
Again, those financial BFFs, gotta love them.
Yeah, they were like,
I gotta love it. And what
was my writers peer group? They're like, we get that you're funny, but you can't make this that breezy. So I cut out a lot of stuff, but no, I typically joke around a lot.
That's so cute. Your fiance must love that, right? Congratulations too on that. When are you getting married?
Who knows? We kind of just look at each other, because he's a principal at a high school. No, he's not at high school anymore. He's K through 8. So he's K through 8 now. So we kind of, right now it's like the kids, everything goes first. So
sure.
Yeah. But no, his humor is a lot darker than mine is. But he is the clown in his family too, so it's pretty fun.
I love that. Well, listen, you've been extraordinary to share all of these resources, and I am a big fan. And like I said on the book, ladies and gentlemen, 5 copies I'm giving away. I'll send it to your door. I'll have a gift wrap for you. So just get in touch with me at tina@csuitesocialmedia.com, and we will have all the resources that Eugenié has gone through the extent to make sure that we make them available. And again, please share them. I'd love for you to share Eugenié's books and messages and follow her on Twitter. And you have been such an extraordinary guest. Thank you for taking time out of your rainy day here. And we look forward to Equal Pay Day for Black women and showing up for that.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Thank you, Eugenié. You're listening to In the Suite, a podcast that shares amazing stories of women in business in the financial services and the wealth management industry. This podcast is sponsored by C-Suite Social Media, a digital marketing and social media agency for C-Suite leaders in finance and technology. You can visit csuitesocialmedia.com to learn more and for show notes from today's broadcast. And thank you so much for listening and subscribing and helping to support this podcast with your reviews. I would love it, and it would mean so much to me if you left us a 5-star review for this very special and timely episode with Eugenié George and downloaded the free chapter of her book, Our Many Stories, at eugeniégeorge.com. And always, if you would like to share the name of a successful woman in financial services we should interview, please send it to me at tina@csuitesocialmedia.com. We have received a lot of great names so far, and we're working really hard behind the scenes to make it all possible. Again, thank you so much for listening and subscribing to In the Suite.